concern about conservation. And at that time, it was mostly, habitat for wildlife and forest preservation. Then came climate change, much later, because in the 70s there was a lot of ecology action, but it was mostly about recycling and, trying not to use as much gas. And then came climate change, and with fires and the melting ice caps and the weather disasters, my recycling and my little Prius seemed to not be a very good effort. It just seemed paltry. And my concern is even greater now because I have 2 little grandchildren, a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I wonder what kind of world we're leaving for them. And the huge changes that we need to make seem insurmountable when I look at them as just one person. We decided as a committee to focus on the positive changes that we can make rather than focusing on, how disastrous everything is, because we already know that things are not looking very good. And so we are just going to focus on the positives so that we don't become paralyzed. One of the actions that we know as a church would make a big impact would be replacing our aging methane-releasing gas heaters with heat pumps. And yet I have to say that when I was on the vestry, the parish hall needed a repair of the heater, coming to $27,000 for the repair and $87,000 to replace it with a heat pump. And we unanimously, obviously me included, voted to repair the heater because who has $80,000 just kicking around? But we have talked about that as a committee and plan to look at ways to save for it and plan for the future when we'll need a heater for the next repair so that we aren't just caught with, an $80,000 bill. So I hope you'll join us as a committee. We're small, but we're going to be talking about all the things that we've researched, and we've gone online for looking at what churches can do for climate change as a corporate body, and also what individuals can do. And there's one graph that I'll be bringing then that has the impact for climate change of your different actions, so recycling or, not flying, which is a hard one to not do, or to, that's one of my things. Is like, oh dear, because I do like to take trips. But there's a lot of things that you can do in between as well. And so we're going to look at all of those. Thank you.
My own concern has been growing over the past number of years, like I think it has for many of us. And I was really grateful that we started the season of creation today, and through Aaron's sermon and through the prayers, I think all of us are increasingly aware of the situation that we're in. And it's a dire one. In the creation story, God created this beautiful planet for us and said it was good. And here we are with so many different disasters. And in a sense, I think that this, Emily Dickinson called it this whole experiment of green, and if we look out, it is all green, is kind of the face of God. And I think many of us find God in nature, or renewed, our faith is renewed and strengthened with the glories of the creation. And so we certainly want to keep it. And then there's the future of our families and all the families on the earth. And I also noticed over the last few years how many young voices were really speaking to me, and as prophets, and especially Greta Thunberg. And there are other young people, on gun issues and so forth that are really speaking, so that I think we really must listen to them. Anyway, we've been talking about this, and we've got a pretty good presentation for you next week, which will be about a full hour long. But just today is 2 weeks. Thanks, Robin. That's right. Okay. All right. So anyway, we'll in 2 weeks we will have a longer presentation for you, and I hope it'll give you a chance to think about things, read up on things, see how you might like to join us, how you might like to be involved, and there'll be an opportunity afterwards. I have a sign-up sheet if people want to join us in the conversation prior to that. We'd love to have you. But I wanted to say, as Judy said, we're trying to find hope. And hope is essential, I think, for people to do just about anything. And one peculiar place that I've been finding it is, I think probably many of you have seen the movie Oppenheimer. And going back and thinking about the nuclear situation, which has troubled me also for many years. As I mentioned, I'd lived in Nevada and was concerned about that. But it's been 80 years, and we're still here. And we haven't had these, we haven't had nuclear war. And we've been able, sort of on a wing and a prayer, to survive. And I have a feeling we might be able to do something similar with climate change. We actually may be able to, if not reverse it, stop it, and give young people the possibility of a life, such as many of us older ones have already had. So I also I listened to, one of the resources I listened to is a youth podcast on climate change, and it's fun. It's this young kid, I think he's in 7th grade or something, talking about how the older people have ruined the planet, and it's sort of up to us kids now. But it's an upbeat podcast, and one of the things he said is if every person on the earth planted 2 trees every year of their lives, we would solve the problem. And I thought, that's maybe kind of difficult, but we've done a lot of things. We've vaccinated a lot of people all over the planet. We might just be able to do some of these things. So there's reason to feel encouraged and hopeful. So Cameron's going to talk a little bit more about young people and climate change, but I hope you'll join us. I think it's important for churches, and other churches can join us in the area, and then there's other denominations, and maybe we can really get this thing off the ground.
Thank you, Penelope. I'll just finish off by saying, as somebody who's part of the younger generation, it kind of feels like I've grown up with this looming cloud over my shoulder of like, climate change is coming for you, for you personally almost. And it feels like it's almost encapsulated every aspect of of my social decision making, of like, what types of things how do I live my life in a way that that I can do this? And it can get so overwhelming to have that like dictate everything you do as an individual. I don't think that that's quite the way to make change happen. It's not going to be us as individuals making individual choices. It's going to be us coming together and taking bigger steps together, and in a very multifaceted thing. Some things might be individual, like trying to use more public transit. Some things might be more communal, like advocacy, perhaps for more robust public transit. That's a big one for me. But together we can make changes. And in fact, we already have made some changes. It's not like we're starting from ground zero. We have taken steps already, and in 2 weeks we'll talk a little bit more about our journey as a community on our own climate change journey. So it's not all doom and gloom, even though it feels like that sometimes. Even though, I've got a friend who's a botanist who says, oh, some of these trees, I don't know if they'll survive in our lifetime. And I'm like, well, that's depressing. How can we help, right? Instead of instead of just falling short. So, and the way that we help is by banding together and using collective voices and making significant change as a group. And I think that we at St. Jude's are really good at coming together and, and doing that type of thing. So thank you. I think the 3 of us will be hanging around at the table over here for the next 15 minutes or so. If you're interested in just talking about some stuff, or if you want to join the committee or any of those things, come talk to us, and let's get moving. Thank you.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.